French Revolution was a period of time in France when the people overthrew the monarchy and took control of the government. The French Revolution lasted 10 years from 1789 to 1799. May 5th, 1789, Estates General called to meet. The Estates General was made of different groups of people called estates. The estates were important social division in the culture of ancient France. What estates you belonged to had a major impact on your social status and quality of life. The first estate was made of clergy. These were people who worked for the church, including priests, monks, bishops, and nuns. This was the smallest estate in terms of population. Second estate. The second estate was French nobility. These people held most of the high offices in land, got special privileges, and didn't have to pay most of the taxes. The third estate, the rest of the population, around 98% of the people, were members of the third estate. These people were the peasants, craftsmen, and laborers of the land. They paid taxes including the gabelle, tax on salt, and corvée. They had to work on a certain number of days for free for the local lord or the king each year. June 20th, 1789. Tennis court. No, they didn't actually battle it out by playing tennis. They just met at a tennis court. The tennis court was a result of growing discontent of the third estate in France in the face of King Louis XVI, desire to hold on the country's history of absolute government. King Louis XVI did not condone the formation of the action of the National Assembly. He ordered the building where the National Assembly was meeting the Salles d'Estats closed. The National Assembly was not to be denied, however. They met on the local tennis court called Jeu de Paume. While at the tennis court, the members took an oath to keep meeting until the king recognized them as a legitimate government body. The members of the Third Estate, who began to call themselves the National Assembly, took the tennis court oath, French, Serment de Jeu de Paume, vowing not to separate and to resemble whatever circumstances required. Until the constitution of the kingdom is established, the oath had a great effect on the nation of France by how it was the first time France formally stood against the rule of Louis XVI. However, most likely the greatest effect of this oath had was it eventually gave birth to the king's power, being greatly subdued, and in doing so formed France's new constitutional monarchy government. July 14th, 1789, storming of Bastille. The Bastille was a fortress built in the late 1300s to protect Paris during the Hundred Years' War. By the late 1700s, the Bastille was mostly used as a state prison by King Louis XVI. The revolutionaries who stormed the Bastille were mostly craftsmen and store owners who lived in Paris. They were members of the French social class called the Third Estate. These were around 1,000 men who participated in the attack. The Third Estate had recently made demands of the king and had demanded that the commoners have more of the say in government. They were worried that he was preparing the French army for an attack. In order to arm themselves, they took over the Hotel des Invalides in Paris, where they were able to get muskets. However, they didn't have gunpowder. The Bastille was rumored to be full of political prisoners and was a symbol to many of the oppression of the king. It also had stores of gunpowder that the revolution needed for their weapons. The storming of Bastille set off a series of events that led to the overthrow of King Louis XVI and the French Revolution. The success of revolutionaries gave commoners throughout France the courage to rise up and fight against the nobles who had ruled them for so long. July 17th, 1789. Great fear begins. Spirit of the rebellion spread to the French countryside, speaking a wave of violence, and the peasants attacked manor houses in an effort to destroy the legal records of their feudal obligations. In the French Revolution, a period of panic arrived by peasants and other amid rumors of the aristocracy conspiracy by the king and the privilege to overthrow the Third Estate. The National Assembly decided to abolish feudalism in France and declared equality of taxation to all classes and constituted one of the greatest social changes of the revolution and ended serfdom where it existed. August 26, 1789, Declaration Rights of Man became the constitution blueprint for France in the enlightenment philosophy, freedom of expression, and religion. Taxes could be raised only the common consent, all public servants accountable for the conduct in office, separation of powers through separate branches, and citizen applies to all French people regardless of class. It's a fundamental document of French Revolution and the history of human and civil rights. It was influenced by the American Revolution. Men are born free and remain free in equal rights. Natural rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression, and law is expression of the general will. October 5th to October 6th, 1789, Women's March on Versailles. The Women's March on Versailles was an important event at the start of French Revolution. It gave the revolutionaries confidence in the power of people over the king. Marched in the rain from Paris to Versailles in what was to be the pivotal event in the intensifying French Revolution, leading up to the march. In 1789 France, the main food of commoners was bread. A poor French economy had led to a scarcity of bread and high prices. The people were hungry in Paris. Women would go to the market to buy bread for their family, only to find what was little bread was available and was very expensive. Next is the execution of Louis XVI. One day after being convicted of conspiracy with foreign powers and sentenced to death by the French National Convention, King Louis XVI is executed by guillotine in the Place de Révolution in Paris. This actually had the effect of infuriating the French populace. September 21, 1793, Reign of Terror begins. The Reign of Terror was a dark, violent period of time during the French Revolution. Radicals took control of the revolutionary government. They arrested and executed everyone who they suspected might not be loyal to the revolution, leading up to the terror. The French Revolution had begun 4 years earlier with the storming of Bastille. Since then, the government had been in constant state of change. By 1793, the revolutionary government was in crisis. France was being attacked by foreign countries on all sides, and civil war was breaking out in many regions. Radicals led by Maximilien Robespierre took over the government and started the Reign of Terror. Throughout the next year, France was ruled by the terror. People had to be careful for everything they said, what they did, and who they talked to. The slightest hint of opposition to the revolutionary government could mean prison or even death. Sometimes revolutionaries accused people they didn't like or wanted to get rid of without any evidence. All anyone had to do was to accuse someone, and they were considered guilty. Around 7,000 people were officially executed in France, including 2,639 in Paris. Many more died in prison or were beaten to death in the streets. Over 200,000 people were arrested. October 16, 1793, execution of Marie Antoinette. Not long after the Reign of Terror began, Marie Antoinette was brought to trial. She was found guilty and was executed by guillotine in October 16, 1793. She was put on trial for treason. Executing monarchs shows step forward revolution and progression enlightenment. October 16, 1793, execution of Marie Antoinette.
Good morning, Rockbridge High School. Today is 8A. At this time, turn your precinct boards to the morning announcements. Thank you.
July 28, 1794, execution of Robespierre. Tries to commit suicide, fails, and placed in dungeon like Antoinette. Guillotine. The king's execution did not, however, resolve the struggle between Guillotine and Montagnards. The deputies of the extreme left. And there we have it, the execution where Robespierre was killed publicly. November 9th, 1799, Napoleon takes power. Since 1792, France's revolutionary government had been engaged in military conflicts with various European nations. The following year, the Directory, the five-person group that had governed France since 1794-95, offered to let Napoleon lead an invasion of in England. Napoleon determined that France's naval forces were not yet ready to go up against the superior British Royal Navy. Instead, he proposed an invasion of Egypt. In an effort to wipe out British trade routes with India, Napoleon's troops scored a victory against Egypt's military rulers, the Mamluks, at the Battle of Pyramids in July 1798. Soon, however, his forces were stranded after his naval fleet was nearly decimated by the British at the Battle of Nile in August 1798. In early 1799, Napoleon's army launched an invasion of the Ottoman Empire-ruled Syria, which ended with the failed siege of Acre, located in modern-day Israel. That summer, with the political situation in France marked by uncertainty, the ever-ambitious and cunning Napoleon opted to abandon his army to Egypt and return to France. Napoleon's enemy learned from fighting against him, shaping warfare in the decades and centuries that followed. These nations shifted to more conservative government to prevent similar revolution and rebellion. Importantly, Napoleon's fighting with Spain and Portugal disrupted management of their colonies in the Americas, leading to many of those countries' independence. Napoleon also sold the Louisiana Territory to the U.S., which contributed to the country's rise to power in the Americas and the world. These are the events of French Revolution. Au revoir!